everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining us for another great movie review here on Let's Talk. If you are a first-timer to the channel, thank you so much for joining us. And if you are a long-time subscriber or a member of the Let's Talk community, then one, thank you so much for your continued support. You have no idea how much it means to us. And two, you are not in the wrong place. I am just the new face over here at Let's Talk. So before I start my first video, I want to introduce myself. My name is Dennis, and I want to have a big thank you to Matt and John for allowing me to have this opportunity to join the community that you have all worked so hard to build. I really am honored to be here. Looking forward to a lot of really great discussions about film with all of you. So Matt and John, thank you again one more time. And to everyone out there watching now, thank you again for joining us. So for my first video, I wanted to dive into a genre that I very much enjoy, my favorite genre personally, and that is horror. And I wanted to start with two films that I really enjoyed, and that would be The Strangers and The Strangers Prey at Night. So I wanted to go into detail about these films just because when I first saw them when they first came out, I felt like they were very, very scary films, and for a lot of different reasons than your typical films. Looking forward to have that discussion with you guys. Obviously, at the end, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to let us know. I love to talk about this a little bit more in depth with you after the video. But before I dive in, if you are interested in movie reviews, 4K Blu-ray reviews, TV reviews, and maybe some video game reviews, we do them all on this channel here. So please do hit that subscribe button and make sure that you turn notifications on. To start off, I wanted to go into part one, The Strangers, which is the first of these two films. And it did come out in 2008. So it's been out for a long time now, and it actually was a pretty big success when it came out. I think it cost about $9 million to make, and it made, I think it was 82 million in the box office. So when it first came out, there was definitely a lot of traction with it. A lot of people went to see it. So I'm really happy to see that. You know, I'm glad that it stuck around this long. People really wanted a sequel back then. It took 10 years to get one, unfortunately. But just to start, The Strangers 1, as I said, came out in 2008. It was starring Scott Speedman as James and Liv Tyler as Kristen. Now, this was directed by Brian Bertino, and at the beginning of the film, it does say that it is based on true events or inspired by true events. The first one, as well as the second one, do this. You know, they do the whole intro with the guy with the really deep voice saying the following events that are about to be shown, or, you know, based on real life and all that stuff. Spoiler alert, as we all know, Hollywood does like to play pretty fast and loose with that kind of terminology. Turns out this is not actually entirely a true story. It is based on two separate stories that are combined into one. The first being the Manson family murders. That's kind of where the serial killer aspect and multiple people coming to kill has come from. The second is a little bit more creepy. It actually comes from the director's childhood. He said that in a neighborhood he grew up in, there were a string of break-ins into the homes, and what these people would do is go up to the doors, knock, and if you didn't answer, they knew no one was home and we could break in. If you did answer, they knew they couldn't just run away because that would be suspicious. So instead, they would ask if a random person was home. You know, knock on the door, "Hi, is Tara here?" And you would say, "No, you must have the wrong house." Or, you know, if they maybe just landed on a name and said, "Hey, is James here?" and there was a James, they might ask you, "Who are you? We've never seen you." And then you say, "Oh, sorry, wrong house." And they'd move on. Either way, if you answered, they knew they wouldn't be breaking in that night, and if you didn't answer, they knew they could break in. Before we go further, this is your warning. Spoilers ahead for both films. I already spoiled the true story thing for you, so if you don't want any more before you go rewatch or watch for the first time, this is your warning. Moving forward, we will be spoiling a lot of the plot for both films. Just kind of a high-level overview. We join James and Kristen in the car. They are on their way to James's family cabin to start a romantic weekend, or so they thought. James, they brought Kristen to a family wedding, and at that wedding, he actually took her outside and proposed, and we find out that she says no. So now, what was once going to be a very romantic weekend is already very awkward because he had this cabin they were going to get dressed up with roses and candles and all of this romantic stuff because he figured they were going to be going there to celebrate their engagement. There's that awkward tension between them throughout the whole film. They make their way to the cabin, but that, unfortunately for them, is the least of their worries. When they first get there, James makes a call to his brother asking him, "Please come pick me up." Nothing went to plan. Nothing is how I thought it was going to be. I just need to get out of here and put some space between me and Kristen if there's any hope for our relationship. So while he's waiting for his brother to get there, there's just this tension between him and Kristen because she feels terrible for telling him no, but knows that she's not ready to get married. He feels terrible because he was just rejected, but also is trying not to be too mean about it because he still does love her. And that's kind of how this movie builds. It is a little bit of a slow burn. I will warn you if you haven't seen it. It's not your typical scary movie where, there's a ton of jump scares and there's one big bad person coming around and slaughtering 100 people. It does take its time in that sense. So you do have to be patient with it. But once the action gets going, it really does get going. And it all starts with, like that story from the director's childhood, with a knock at the door. They open the door and there's a woman there they don't know who asks if Tamara's home. And they say, there's no Tamara here. And she says, okay, and leaves. Unfortunately for them, it's not like the real story, and they now know people are home, and that's what they wanted. So the next series of events, without getting super duper into spoilers and details, while still providing some, is a lot of terror. It's a very claustrophobic feeling movie because little things happen here and there, like Kristen sipping wine, looking out the window in the kitchen, when in the hallway in the background from the darkness, one of the main bad guys comes out. The main guy with the big potato sack on his head. He just kind of appears, just stares at her for a few seconds, and then just steps back. And that's it. And it's terrifying because she never even looks. She doesn't hear footsteps. She has no idea someone's in the house with her. Then at another point, James he says, I left my cell phone in the car. He runs outside to get his cell phone and he sees the car has been destroyed. And his phone is gone. And when they come back in, the phones are in the fireplace. So it's all these little things like, how did someone get in the house? We've been in here the whole time. How'd they get in here, grab our phones and throw them in the fireplace? And then it really starts to escalate. The knock at the door happens again. They go over there, but this time the knocking is loud. Bang, 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 bang. It's not just little knocks. And they're terrified. And then when they're ready to leave, boom, axe through the door, and someone's breaking in. So they find a gun, and their plan is, let's just hide. We can't leave, obviously. We have no phone, we have no car. There's nothing we can do. They grab a shotgun that they found in the house, and they hide in a closet. And now this is a big plot twist too, because they're ready. They're sitting there. James has that gun locked and loaded, and he is ready to kill. And then that's when his brother walks by the door, and he blows him away. And the reason he died was he didn't follow the typical horror movie stereotypes or tropes. He didn't come into a scene where he sees a destroyed car and a broken door and shout out that he's there. He came in quietly, trying to sneak up to see what was going on, and that cost him his life. And then they do end up trying to leave, but unfortunately, like I said, they just can't. Every exit is blocked. There's 3 main antagonists in this film. There is 1 male and 2 females. They all just have every exit, every entry blocked, and they just have them cornered. And that's that claustrophobic feel that I mentioned. Throughout this whole time too, there's no score. It's really just a record player playing old music, and it's really great because it sets the tone. You're in this cabin, it's very middle of nowhere feeling, and you just hear the scratching of the needle and these old songs playing. And at one point, they just keep replaying the same part because the record is skipping. And it's so ominous and so creepy. It gives me the goosebumps thinking about it. But then ultimately, as I said, James ends up killing his brother. There's no way out of the house. And unfortunately for them, bad guys win. They end up being able to kill both of them. But before they do, in one of probably the creepiest moments, aside from that hallway scene, both of them, James and Kristen, are tied to a chair. And the 3 antagonists are standing in front of them, and they unmask themselves. But we never see their face. We just see the mask come off, never see what they look like. And Kristen is still conscious at that point, and she just asks, why are you doing this? And the explanation from one of the girls is, because you were home. And that was it. Bad guys win. Kill James and Kristen, they get in their truck and they drive away, never caught, nothing ever happens to them. They just ride off into the sunset. So I really do think this movie, it is terrifying in the sense that it's so subtle. And, it's not aliens, it's not zombies, it's not, demons and possessions. It's not an undead spirit coming back to avenge its untimely death. The big bad in this film is just people. And it's just random people who just decided one day, Let's knock on doors, and if someone answers, there we go. And that's all it is. And I think that's truly what makes this original film stand out, because it wasn't trying to be your stereotypical horror film. It wasn't trying to be your run-of-the-mill, everyday slasher film. It was really trying to hammer that point home of, we sit here and watch these movies all day long, and yeah, zombies are creepy and sharks are scary and all this stuff, but what's ultimately the scariest is the fact that at any point a person can lose their mind and decide that they're gonna kill you. And the only reason they picked them is because they were home. What's more scary than that? And that brings us into part 2, which was the long-awaited sequel to The Strangers Prey at Night. It took 10 years to get this film made. After the success of the first one, people honestly thought a sequel was gonna happen. Hollywood loves it when a horror movie is successful and makes a lot of money at the box office. They are pumping out sequels left and right. It feels like every year they come out with a new sequel. They did it with Saw. How many Friday the 13ths are there? It's every single popular horror movie. If it's really, really successful, sequels come. But we waited 10 years for this, and I gotta say, I don't know that it was worth it. It follows a lot of the same tropes as the first one. It's almost like they recycled a lot of the first one. We meet up with a family of 4, your run-of-the-mill mom, dad, daughter, son. They have a troubled daughter that they're bringing to boarding school, but on their way, they decide they're gonna stop at a family-owned trailer park over by some lake just to spend the night, because the drive to the boarding school is 12, 13 hours, whatever it is. On the trip, when they stop, this is where the strangers are. The 3 same antagonists from the first film, the one guy and the 2 girls, they're there, and again, spoilers ahead, they killed the aunt and uncle who own the trailer park, and now their targets are this family. A lot of this is very similar to the first, like I said. The first one, James and Kristen were going away. This one, the family's going away. They end up in a place that's, in the middle of nowhere in both films. In both films, the one girl knocks on the door and asks if Tamara's home, and it's so identical down to the exact reactions. In both films, the response is, you have the wrong house, or in the second one, you have the wrong trailer. And then the husband says, that was weird, but we're in the middle of nowhere, people get lost all the time. So a lot of it felt recycled. Same thing happens. People get separated, the strangers play their games, and slowly they pick people off one by one. The mom goes first while the dad is out looking for the kids, or the dad is out with the son to go find the aunt and uncle. The mom and the daughter are in the trailer. The mom dies first, but of course gets the daughter out, and then we're down to 3. Then they try to get away in a car. The dad and the son get in a van, and they try to escape to find the daughter and get out of there. But, the main antagonist guy throws a cinder block at the van, they crash, and of course the dad is pinned, the son is okay, the dad says, go save your daughter, and then the guy antagonist comes and kills the father. And then there were 2. Now we're down to the daughter, who's the troubled one, and the son, who's the golden boy. And this is what I mean, it just follows a lot of those tropes. You can kind of see where it's gonna go from here. All the while, at some point, the daughter, who's the final girl, the stereotypical final girl, she kills one of the main antagonists, gets away, kills a second antagonist, gets away. Her brother seems dead, but she comes at the last minute and saves him. And then ultimately in the end, she ends up killing the main guy. But before she does this, what I did like about it is a little homage to Texas Chainsaw, which is the original. The final girl, she's on a road, she flags down a passerby who's in a truck. As the passerby gets out, she sees the main guy behind her with an axe, panics, jumps in the truck to leave, and the final girl jumps in the bed of the truck to leave. This is where the main antagonist jumps up with his axe, they battle a little bit, she's able to knock him off, kill him, whatever it is, and then it ends with her driving away in the bed of a truck, blood-soaked, just terrified. Very nice homage to Texas Chainsaw, the original, with that ending in the bed of the truck as well. And then the film ends with us finding out that she was able to save her brother, and they're in a hospital room. He's hooked up to some machines, and she's sitting there next to him, just terrified. The interesting ending is, as she's sitting there, there is a knock at the door, and you see the terror in her face. Now, it is obviously not the strangers who are in the hospital to get her, but it does kind of touch on that part that a lot of horror movies don't ever get into, which is the trauma of being a survivor. You survived this whole thing and you think everything is hunky-dory, we're ready to go, but there is some PTSD there. And now every knock at the door, her mind has to race and think, is it them again? Is it someone else coming to kill me? Is it just the doctor? So I thought that was a nice touch. But overall, part 2, Pray at Night, really just recycled a lot for me. So if I had to recommend, I would absolutely recommend The Strangers. You can watch Pray at Night if you just want to get a little more of it, but I'm telling you now, it is very, very recycled. It follows a lot of the same plot lines as the first one, and I liken it almost to the Purge series. The first Purge came out, and it was very much a claustrophobia movie. Family trapped in a house, and that's the first Strangers. 2 people trapped in a house, nowhere to go, with these maniacs outside. How do you survive? The Strangers Pray at Night is like the rest of that Purge series. It just became like an open world. They're in this massive trailer park, so much ground to cover. How do 3 people really rein in 4 people and control so much of the surroundings? It just got a little too big for its britches, in my opinion. And it also, like I said, it went from The Strangers, which kind of rode its own path. You know, it did its own thing. This one followed a lot of just typical. It was like, we need a horror movie. Okay, we need a final girl. We need X amount of kills. We need a jump scare here and an ending that, you know, leaves a little bit of ambiguity. You know, it was just cookie cutter. It wasn't a bad film, but very cookie cutter. The first one I felt was very original and really, really hit the nail on the head. So with all that in mind, I would have to rank these. I would say The Strangers, the first one, I would honestly give it an 8 out of 10. I think it was really, really good. Some of the acting was subpar. The lines were kind of weird, and that kind of hindered it a bit. But overall, for originality's sake and everything, I gotta go 8 out of 10. I really think it's good. Highly recommend you watch it if you haven't. And if you haven't seen it in a long time, definitely check it out again. I think you might enjoy it. And then for Pray at Night, if I'm being honest, I gotta go maybe a 6 out of 10. It's not a bad movie. I can't stress that enough. It's not poorly shot. The acting isn't terrible. It's a fine movie. You know, if you're into it, you can go ahead and check it out. You know, everything would be great if you take a look at it all. Everything's wonderful. Only issue being that, again, it just didn't, it missed the mark for me. You know, it really, really missed the mark in terms of originality. It just didn't do it. So with that in mind, like I said, Strangers Part 1, 8 out of 10. Strangers Part 2, Pray at Night, 6 out of 10. Definitely recommend you check both of them out, but especially the first one is fantastic. And again, guys, thank you so much for sticking through this, staying with me till the end here. If you do have any questions or comments, throw them down in the comment section below. I'm more than happy to open up that discussion with you now. And, you know, like I said, thank you for having me. And Matt and John, thank you again as well for the opportunity. And if you are a fan, like we said in the beginning, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on. Thank you very much.